My name is Emma. I'm 32 years old, and I learned the hard way that some people will destroy you just to watch you bleed. It started with a phone call that made my heart soar. My stepsister Melissa was practically vibrating with excitement through the receiver. "Emma, I have to tell you something huge, but you have to promise me, you won't tell anyone. Not Mom, not Rick, not even Jake." I was sitting in my tiny apartment 3 hours away from the family home, feeling that familiar flutter of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe Melissa finally saw me as more than just the annoying little stepsister who came with the package deal when her dad married my mom. "I promise," I whispered, gripping the phone tighter. "It's not just an engagement party," she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "It's our wedding. David and I are getting married that day, but we're telling everyone it's just the engagement party. Only the wedding party knows the truth." My heart hammered against my ribs. A secret wedding. She was trusting me with this massive secret. "Emma, I want you to be one of my bridesmaids." I actually gasped. After years of being the afterthought, the one who got invited to family dinners out of obligation, the one who Melissa barely acknowledged at Christmas, she wanted me in her wedding party. "Really?" My voice cracked embarrassingly. "Of course you're my sister, aren't you?" "Sister." She called me sister. I spent the next hour on that call talking about dresses and colors and how I'd drive down early to help with preparations. Melissa laughed at my jokes, asked my opinion on flowers, made me feel like I mattered. For the first time in the 15 years since Rick became my stepdad, I felt like I truly belonged in this blended family disaster. The next few weeks were pure magic. I researched bridesmaid dress styles, started a secret Pinterest board, even looked into taking extra time off work. I guarded that secret like it was made of gold. When Mom asked about the engagement party, I played dumb. When Rick wondered aloud why Melissa was being so particular about everyone's outfits, I just shrugged and said she was excited. But Rick wasn't stupid. He'd raised Melissa from age 10, knew her better than anyone. One evening, about a month before the engagement party, he called me sounding frustrated. "Emma, sweetheart, I need to vent for a minute. Melissa's driving me up the wall about this party. She's acting like I need to wear a tuxedo to an engagement party. She keeps talking about photographers and special moments and how everything has to be perfect. Between you and me, I think she's planning to surprise everyone with a wedding." My blood turned to ice water. "Dad, that's crazy. It's just an engagement party. She's probably just excited." But I could hear it in my own voice. The lie. And Rick heard it too. "Emma, honey, you know something, don't you?" "No, I don't know anything. Just wear something nice for her, okay? It's important to her." The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Finally, Rick sighed. "All right, sweetheart. I'll wear the nice suit." I thought that was the end of it. I thought I'd deflected successfully. I thought I'd kept my promise. I was so incredibly wrong. 2 days later, my phone rang at 7 a.m. Melissa's name flashed on the screen, and I answered with a sleepy smile, expecting more wedding talk. Instead, I got nuclear rage. "You absolute piece of garbage!" She screamed so loudly, I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You ruined everything, everything." "Melissa, what?" "Don't play dumb with me. You told Rick you promised me you wouldn't tell anyone, and you went straight to my dad and blabbed everything." My heart was pounding so hard I thought I might pass out. "I didn't tell him anything. He figured it out on his own." "Liar." "He confronted me last night, Emma. He knew everything. Said he knew it was a wedding all along. The only person who could have told him was you." "Melissa, please. I swear on my dad's grave, I didn't." "Don't you dare bring your dead father into this. You know what you're out. You're not a bridesmaid anymore. I should have never asked you in the first place. You live too far away anyway, it never made sense." The words hit me like physical blows. "Please don't do this. I kept your secret, I swear I did. Save it, I can't trust you, I never should have trusted you." The line went dead. I sat there in my apartment, still in my pajamas, staring at the phone and feeling like my chest had been cracked open. I called Mom, sobbing so hard I could barely get the words out. Told her everything. The secret wedding, being a bridesmaid, the accusation, being kicked out of the wedding party. Mom was horrified. "Oh, honey, Rick just overheard me talking to you. He came to find me right after you hung up. He looked terrible, Emma. He knows he messed up." But the damage was done. Rick called me that afternoon, his voice heavy with guilt. "Emma, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I confronted Melissa without thinking about the consequences for you. I told her I figured it out myself, but she's not believing me." 3 days later, Melissa called one final time. Her voice was cold as winter steel. "Emma, I've been thinking, and I've decided you shouldn't come to the wedding at all. You're uninvited. Don't show up." "Melissa, please. At least," she continued, and I could hear the cruel smile in her voice. "At least my dad can walk me down the aisle now. Unlike some people, I still have a father who loves me." She hung up, leaving me standing in my kitchen, clutching the phone with tears streaming down my face and a hole where my heart used to be. That was the moment I realized that 15 years of trying to earn my place in this family had been a complete waste of time. I was never going to be good enough. I was never going to belong. But what I didn't know then, what I couldn't have imagined, was that this betrayal was just the beginning. Melissa's cruelty was about to cost her everything, and I was going to have a front row seat to watch it all burn down. The wedding was on a Saturday in October. I know because I saw every single photo on Facebook. I spent that entire weekend in my apartment with the curtains drawn, scrolling through the pictures that Melissa's friends kept posting. There she was in her flowing white dress, radiant and perfect. There was Rick, beaming as he walked her down the aisle, looking handsome in his expensive suit. There were all the bridesmaids, girls I'd never even heard of, laughing and posing with their matching bouquets. And there was the empty space where I should have been. I studied every photo like I was searching for clues to a crime. The reception looked gorgeous. The flowers were exactly the shade of blush pink we'd talked about on the phone that magical day when she'd asked me to be her bridesmaid. The cake was 3 tiers with delicate sugar flowers. I remembered her mentioning she wanted something romantic but not too fancy. I'd helped her plan this wedding, and then I'd been erased from it completely. Mom called me that Sunday evening. "Honey, how are you holding up?" "I'm fine." I lied, closing my laptop so I couldn't see the photos anymore. Rick feels terrible about everything. He keeps saying he should have handled it differently. "It doesn't matter now, Mom. Maybe you could call Melissa, try to work things out. I know she was upset, but surely she's calmed down now that the wedding's over." I almost laughed. "Mom, she uninvited me from her wedding and told me at least she has a father who loves her. I don't think she wants to work things out." Mom went quiet. She'd never heard that last detail before. "She said that to you?" "Yeah, she did." "Oh, Emma, honey, that's cruel." Cruel, such a small word for such a big wound. After that conversation, something shifted inside me. I stopped checking Facebook obsessively. I stopped crying every time someone mentioned the wedding. I stopped caring. When Christmas rolled around, I almost didn't go home. But Jake convinced me, "Don't let her win, Em. Don't let her drive you away from the family." So I went, and it was exactly as awkward and horrible as I expected. Melissa and David were there, of course, glowing with newlywed happiness. She barely acknowledged me beyond a cold "Hello, Emma" when I walked in. The rest of the family seemed to be walking on eggshells, trying to pretend everything was normal. During dinner, Melissa regaled everyone with stories from their honeymoon in Bali. She passed around professional wedding photos, gushing about how perfect everything had been. "It was exactly the intimate wedding we wanted," she said, not looking at me. "Just our closest family and friends, people we could really trust." The word trust hit me like a slap. Mom tried to lighten the mood. "Emma, didn't you get promoted at work recently?" "Yeah, I'm the new regional manager," I said quietly. "That's wonderful," Rick said, his voice a little too enthusiastic. "You always were the responsible one." Melissa's fork clinked against her plate. "Some of us have been busy building actual relationships instead of just focusing on careers." The room went silent. Jake's jaw tightened. Mom looked mortified. "I think career success is important too," David said gently, clearly trying to diffuse the tension. He was a good guy. It was honestly sad that he'd gotten tangled up with Melissa. "Of course you do," Melissa said sweetly. "Emma's always been the type to put work first. Family has never really been her priority." I set down my fork very carefully. "Is that what you think? Well, you did move 3 hours away, and you've missed, what, the last 2 family barbecues, Mom's birthday dinner." "I missed Mom's birthday dinner because you told everyone I'd probably try to cause drama if I came." Jake told me what you said. Jake shifted uncomfortably but didn't deny it. Melissa's cheeks flushed. I never said that. You said I was jealous of your happiness and that I'd probably make Mom's birthday about myself. That's not... I didn't mean it like that. But her eyes said otherwise. She'd meant every word. After dinner, I escaped to the back porch where Jake found me 20 minutes later. She's gotten worse, he said, settling into the chair next to me. She's always been like this, Jake. I just used to make excuses for it. No, Em, this is different, more calculating. Did you know she tried to get Rick to change his will? I turned to stare at him. What? Yeah, right after the wedding. She made some comment about how, since you and I are basically adults with our own lives, maybe Rick should consider leaving everything to her and Nathan instead. You know, the kids who really need his support. Nathan's 35 and makes 6 figures. I know, Rick shut it down pretty quick, but still, it was weird. We sat in silence for a while, watching our breath make little clouds in the cold air. There's something else, Jake said eventually. David asked me if you were okay. Said Melissa told him you had some kind of mental health issues and that's why you've been acting out lately. My blood turned to ice. She said what? He seemed genuinely concerned about you. I told him you were fine, just heard about the wedding situation. But Emma, she's telling people you're unstable. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not break, I was already broken. This was different. This was the sound of something hardening. What else is she saying? Jake hesitated. That you've always been jealous of her relationship with Rick. That you resent her for having a dad when yours died. That you've been trying to cause problems in her marriage. Each word was like a physical blow. Not just because they were lies, but because they were designed to hurt in the most personal way possible. She was weaponizing my grief, my loneliness, my desperate desire to belong somewhere. She's good at this, I said quietly. Good at what? Making me disappear. First from the wedding, now from the family. She's slowly poisoning everyone against me. Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. Not everyone. Mom and Rick know who you really are. But did they? Because they'd let Melissa uninvite me from the wedding without a real fight. They'd sat there tonight and let her take shots at me over dinner. They'd never asked to hear my side of the story. When I got back to my apartment that night, I made a decision. No more family barbecues. No more birthday dinners. No more putting myself in situations where Melissa could humiliate me. I was done begging for scraps of acceptance from people who'd already decided I wasn't worth their time. What I didn't know yet was that Melissa's campaign to destroy my reputation was just getting started. And what she definitely didn't know was that all her lies were about to catch up with her in ways she never could have imagined. Because while I was pulling back from the family, I was also starting to pay attention. Really pay attention. And Melissa had made a lot more enemies than just me. The truth started unraveling on a Tuesday in March, 6 months after the wedding that changed everything. I was at work, buried in quarterly reports, when my phone buzzed with a Facebook message from someone I barely remembered. Sarah, Melissa's college roommate. We'd met maybe twice at family gatherings years ago. Hey Emma, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. I heard about what happened with Melissa's wedding, and I wanted you to know that I think you got a raw deal. There's some stuff you should probably know about her. Can we talk? My finger hovered over the keyboard for a full minute before I typed back. Sure, call me tonight. Sarah called at 8 p.m. sharp, and the conversation that followed shattered every assumption I'd made about my place in this family drama. I was Melissa's maid of honor. Sarah started, her voice tight with anger. Or I was supposed to be. She dropped me 3 weeks before the wedding. What happened? Same thing that happened to you, basically. She accused me of betraying her trust, said I couldn't be counted on, made me out to be the villain. Except in my case, she was mad because I asked too many questions about the finances. Finances? Sarah let out a bitter laugh. Oh, Emma, you have no idea what you stumbled into. Melissa's been running a con on your family for years. My blood went cold. What kind of con? She's been telling Rick that she's in graduate school. Psychology program, very expensive. He's been paying her tuition, books, living expenses, about $3,000 a month for the past 2 years. Okay, I said slowly, not seeing the problem yet. Emma, she dropped out of that program after the first semester. She's been pocketing the money. The room seemed to tilt around me. That's impossible. She talks about her classes all the time. Her professors, her research project. All lies. Beautiful, detailed lies. I know because I helped her craft some of them in the beginning before I realized what she was doing. She's incredibly good at this, Emma. She creates entire fictional narratives and sells them like they're real. My mind was racing. But Rick would find out eventually, when she doesn't graduate. That's where it gets really twisted. She's been setting up a story about having a nervous breakdown due to family stress. Guess whose fault that breakdown is going to be? I settled in my stomach. Mine. Ding, ding, ding. According to the version she's been spreading, your jealousy and constant drama have made it impossible for her to focus on school. She's the victim of your psychological harassment. I sat down hard on my couch, feeling like I'd been punched. Sarah, how do you know all this? Because she tried to recruit me to back up her story. She wanted me to tell Rick that I'd witnessed you being cruel to her, that I was worried about her mental health because of how you treated her. When I refused, she cut me out of the wedding and told everyone I was an untrustworthy friend who couldn't handle her happiness. Oh my God, it gets worse. Emma, has anyone in your family mentioned Rick's will lately? My conversation with Jake at Christmas flashed through my mind. She tried to get him to change it, leave everything to her and Nathan instead of me and Jake. She's been working on that for months. The story she's spinning is that you and Jake are ungrateful kids who abandoned the family while she's the devoted daughter who's been taking care of Rick in his old age. Rick's 58 and in perfect health. I know, but she's very good at planting seeds. A comment here, a worry there. I'm just concerned about Dad's future. Emma and Jake are so busy with their own lives. What if something happens and he needs care? I felt sick. Physically, genuinely sick. Why are you telling me this? Because she destroyed my friendship with her for asking the wrong questions, and now she's doing the same thing to you. And because... Sarah paused. Because there's someone else you need to talk to. Someone who has actual proof of what she's been doing. Who? Your stepbrother Nathan's ex-wife, Carol. They divorced last year, messy custody battle. During the discovery process, Carol's lawyer found some very interesting financial records. My heart was pounding. What kind of records? The kind that show Melissa has been forging Rick's signature on checks. The kind that show she's been moving money between accounts without his knowledge. The kind that could send her to prison. Why hasn't Carol done anything with this information? Because it wasn't relevant to her divorce case and she figured it was family business. But Emma, Carol's been watching Melissa destroy people for years. She's been waiting for someone to ask the right questions. I gripped the phone tighter. What do you mean, destroy people? Nathan's marriage didn't just fall apart on its own. Melissa spent 2 years feeding Carol lies about Nathan cheating, about him talking badly about her behind her back, about him planning to leave her. She was playing both sides, stirring up drama, making herself indispensable as the neutral family member who was just trying to help everyone get along. Why would she do that? Power, control, and money. Nathan was sending Rick money every month to help with household expenses. When Nathan got divorced and had to pay child support, those payments stopped. Guess who stepped in to help Rick with his finances? The pieces were falling into place like a horrific puzzle. She's been systematically isolating everyone who might see through her lies, and making herself essential to Rick in the process. Emma, she's not just stealing money from him, she's stealing his family. I was quiet for a long moment, processing everything Sarah had told me. Finally, I asked the question that was burning in my chest. How do I stop her? Funny you should ask. Carol and I have been talking. We think it's time someone fought back. Are you interested in hearing our plan? 3 days later, I was sitting in a coffee shop across from Carol, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with the kind of quiet confidence that comes from surviving hell and coming out stronger. Sarah filled you in on the basics, Carol said, sliding a manila folder across the table. This is everything my lawyer found during the divorce proceedings. Bank statements, forged checks, email records. I opened the folder with shaking hands. Page after page of evidence. Melissa's handwriting attempting to mimic Rick's signature. Bank transfers from accounts Rick didn't even know existed. Credit card statements for purchases Rick never made. Carol, this is fraud. Major fraud. $73,000 over the past 18 months, Carol said calmly. That we can prove. The actual amount is probably much higher. Why are you showing me this? Why not just turn it over to the police? Carol leaned back in her chair. Because Rick is a good man who doesn't deserve to have his daughter arrested without warning. And because Melissa has been very careful to make you look like the unstable one. If this comes from Nathan's bitter ex-wife, she can spin it as revenge. But if it comes from you, the family might actually listen. Exactly. Plus, Emma, you have something Carol and I don't have. What's that? Access. You're still Rick's stepdaughter. You still get invited to family functions even if you don't go. Melissa can't completely cut you out without looking suspicious. I stared down at the evidence in front of me. Months of lies, manipulation, theft. Years of making me feel like I was crazy, like I was the problem, like I didn't belong. What exactly are you proposing? Carol smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who'd been waiting a long time for justice. We're proposing that you give Melissa exactly what she's been giving you. A front row seat to her own destruction. For the first time in months, I smiled back. Tell me everything. The plan was surprisingly straightforward. Rick's 60th birthday was coming up in May. Mom had already started putting together a surprise party. All we had to do was wait for Melissa to walk right into her own trap. Carol, Sarah, and I spent weeks coordinating every detail. The beauty of it was that we didn't have to lie about anything. We just had to present the truth in a way that couldn't be spun, denied, or explained away. The key, Carol explained during one of our strategy sessions, is documentation. Melissa's superpower is making people doubt their own memories and perceptions. She can't argue with bank records and forged signatures. The first phase began 3 weeks before the party. I called Mom for the first time in months. Emma, honey, I'm so glad you called. I was worried you were avoiding us completely. I've been thinking about that conversation we had at Christmas, Mom, about trying to work things out with Melissa. I could practically hear Mom's relief through the phone. Oh, sweetheart, that makes me so happy. Do you want me to talk to her? Maybe arrange a lunch? Actually, I was thinking maybe I could help with Rick's surprise party. As a peace offering. Show her that I want to be part of the family. Emma, that's wonderful. I'm sure she'd appreciate the gesture. She's been so stressed lately with school and everything. School? I almost laughed. What's she stressed about? I thought her program was going well. Oh, you know how it is. Graduate school is so demanding. She's been having a hard time with some of her professors, and she's worried about her thesis proposal. Rick's been so supportive, helping with her expenses so she can focus on her studies. There it was. The lie delivered so naturally that Mom completely believed it. That's really generous of him. How much is he helping with, if you don't mind me asking? I don't know the exact amount, but it's significant. He's so proud of her for pursuing her education. Phase 2 kicked in the following week. Jake called me agitated. Something weird is happening. David called me out of the blue yesterday asking if I thought you were okay. What do you mean? He said Melissa's been really worried about you. Apparently you've been sending her strange messages, calling at weird hours, showing up at places where she is. He wanted to know if our family has a history of mental illness. My blood boiled, but I kept my voice steady. Jake, I haven't contacted Melissa since Christmas. I haven't sent her a single message. I know, I told him that. But Emma, she's showing people screenshots of text messages from your number. Weird, rambling stuff about the wedding and how she ruined your life. That's impossible. Jake, I swear to you. I believe you, but she's got evidence. Screenshots, call logs, everything. This was worse than I'd expected. Melissa wasn't just spreading lies anymore. She was manufacturing evidence. I called Carol immediately. She's escalating, Carol said grimly. This is exactly what she did to Nathan. Created fake evidence of cheating by setting up fake social media accounts, sending herself messages from fake numbers. She's tech-savvy and she's desperate. What do I do? Nothing. Don't defend yourself. Don't try to prove the messages are fake. Let her dig the hole deeper. We have something she doesn't know about. What? Rick's been getting suspicious. He asked Nathan to help him check his bank statements last week because some charges didn't look familiar. My heart raced. Does Melissa know? Not yet, but she will soon enough. The confrontation came sooner than expected. Mom called me on a Thursday evening, her voice shaking. Emma, Rick wants to talk to you about Melissa. Can you come home this weekend? What's wrong, Mom? Just, can you come? Rick found some things, financial things, and with everything that's been happening with the messages, I'll be there Saturday morning. I drove home through a spring rainstorm, my stomach churning with anticipation and dread. When I pulled into the driveway, Jake's car was already there along with Nathan's. This was it. Rick met me at the door. He looked like he'd aged 5 years in the past month. His face was gray, his eyes haunted. "Emma, sweetheart, thank you for coming. We need to talk." The family was gathered in the living room like a tribunal. Mom on the couch looking terrified. Jake and Nathan standing by the window. And Melissa perched in Rick's favorite chair looking pale but defiant. Rick sat down heavily and pulled out a manila folder. Not the one Carol had given me, but one that looked remarkably similar. "I've been doing some investigating," Rick said quietly. "About my finances, about some charges on my credit cards that I didn't recognize, about some checks that were written in my name." Melissa's face went white. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about $73,000, Melissa. $73,000 that's gone missing from my accounts over the past year and a half." The room went dead silent, except for the sound of rain hitting the windows. "There's been some kind of mistake," Melissa said, her voice shaking. "Maybe identity theft. You should call the bank." "I did call the bank." Rick's voice was like steel. "They pulled the security footage from the ATM withdrawals. Melissa, it's you, on camera, using my card." Melissa's composure cracked completely. "Dad, I can explain. I was going to pay it back, I swear. School is just so expensive, and you said you wanted to help." "What school, Melissa?" Nathan's voice cut through her explanation like a knife. "I called the registrar's office at your supposed graduate program. You haven't been enrolled there for over a year." "Nathan, that's not—" "Stop." Rick held up his hand. "Just stop lying, please." Melissa looked around the room, desperately searching for allies. Her eyes landed on me. "This is Emma's fault," she said suddenly, her voice rising to a near shriek. "She's been harassing me for months, sending me crazy messages trying to turn the family against me. She's having some kind of breakdown and she's trying to destroy my life." Jake pulled out his phone. "You mean messages like these?" He held up his screen showing the fake text conversation Melissa had created. But underneath the screenshots was something else. Metadata, timestamps, technical information that I couldn't quite read, but that made Melissa's face go ashen. "My girlfriend works in digital forensics," Jake said calmly. "These messages were created using a spoofing app. The metadata doesn't match Emma's actual phone records. You fabricated all of this." "No," Melissa whispered. "No, that's not— you don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Rick said, his voice breaking. "I understand that my daughter has been stealing from me, lying to me, and trying to frame my stepdaughter for harassment." Mom spoke for the first time, her voice barely audible. "Melissa, how could you do this? Emma's been nothing but supportive of you." "Supportive." Melissa's mask finally slipped completely. "She's been jealous of me since the day I walked into this family. She hated that you loved me, that Rick chose me over her. She ruined my wedding. She's been trying to poison you against me." "She didn't ruin your wedding," David said quietly from the doorway. None of us had heard him come in. "You ruined your wedding. You ruined everything." Melissa spun to face her husband. "David, don't—" "I've been talking to Sarah," David continued, stepping into the room. "And Carol, and Emma's phone company. Melissa, I know about all of it. The fake school enrollment, the forged checks, the manufactured evidence. I know you've been lying to me about Emma for months." "David, please, I can explain." "Explain what? Explain how you've been stealing from the man who raised you. Explain how you've been systematically destroying relationships so you could manipulate people. Explain how you convinced me that Emma was mentally unstable when really you're the one who's been playing mind games." Melissa looked around the room one more time, wild-eyed and desperate. Then she did what she'd always done when cornered. She ran. The front door slammed behind her, leaving the rest of us sitting in stunned silence. Rick was the first to speak. "Emma, sweetheart, I owe you an apology. Several apologies. I looked at this man who'd been my stepfather for 15 years, who'd tried his best to love me even when his own daughter was working to turn him against me. And I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Forgiveness. Rick, you couldn't have known." "I should have known. I should have listened to you. I should have protected you." His voice cracked. "Emma, can you ever forgive an old fool?" I got up from my chair and hugged him, feeling like I was finally truly coming home. "There's nothing to forgive, Dad." But even as I said the words, I knew this wasn't over. Melissa was still out there, and people like her don't just disappear quietly into the night. They go down fighting, and they try to take everyone else with them. 3 weeks later, I thought the worst was behind us. Rick had filed a police report David had filed for divorce, and Melissa had seemingly vanished into thin air. She'd cleared out her and David's apartment, maxed out their joint credit cards, and disappeared without a trace. I was finally sleeping through the night again. The family was healing. Rick had insisted on paying for therapy for all of us. Family therapy, he called it, though Melissa obviously wasn't participating. Mom had stopped walking on eggshells. Jake and I were closer than we'd been in years. Then Rick's lawyer called. "Emma, this is going to sound strange, but I need you to come to my office. There's something about your father's estate that's complicated." "My father's been dead for 24 years, Mr. Peterson. What could possibly be complicated about his estate? Just come in and bring any documentation you have about your father's death. Insurance papers, death certificate, anything." I met Rick at the lawyer's office that Thursday afternoon. He looked as confused as I felt. "Mr. Peterson," Rick said as we settled into the leather chairs across from his desk. "What's this about Emma's father died when she was 8? There was no estate to speak of." Mr. Peterson opened a thick file. "That's what we all believed, until Melissa's activities triggered an audit of some old accounts." My blood chilled. "What old accounts?" "Emma, your father had a life insurance policy through his work, a substantial one. The beneficiary was listed as his wife, your mother, with you as the secondary beneficiary if anything happened to her." "Okay," I said slowly. "Mom used that money to pay off the house and put some aside for my college fund." "No, Emma, she didn't." The room seemed to tilt around me. "What do you mean?" Mr. Peterson pulled out a stack of papers. "The insurance company has no record of that policy ever being claimed. The money, all $400,000 of it, has been sitting in an unclaimed funds account for 24 years. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "That's impossible. Mom told me," she said. "Emma," Rick said gently, his face pale. "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." I looked at my stepfather. This man who'd raised me, loved me, tried to protect me, and saw guilt written all over his face. "Tell me what—" "When your mother and I got together, she was in a very bad financial situation. The house was about to be foreclosed on. She had credit card debt, medical bills from your father's final hospital stay. She was drowning." "But the insurance money?" "Emma, your mother never filed the insurance claim because she didn't know about the policy. Your father never told her about it." Mr. Peterson leaned forward. "Emma, there's more. The audit also uncovered something else. Your father had a savings account that he'd been contributing to since you were born. A college fund, essentially. With compound interest over 24 years, it's now worth over $200,000. The room was spinning. $600,000. $600,000 that should have been mine. The question," Mr. Peterson continued, "is how Melissa knew about these accounts." Rick and I stared at him. "What do you mean, how she knew?" "Emma, 3 months ago, Melissa filed paperwork claiming to be your father's daughter. She presented documentation stating that your father was her biological father, that your mother had hidden this fact from the family, and that she was entitled to half of his estate as his child." I couldn't breathe. "That's insane. That's completely insane. My father died when she was 7 years old. She lived in a different state. They never even met." "I know, but Melissa is very good at forgery, as we've discovered. She created a fake birth certificate, fake medical records, even fake letters supposedly written by your father acknowledging paternity. But surely the insurance company would investigate." "They would, if the claim had been processed. But Melissa made a critical error. She got greedy." Mr. Peterson pulled out another document. "She didn't just claim to be your father's daughter. She also claimed that you had died in a car accident 2 years ago, and that she was the sole surviving heir." Rick's face went white. "She tried to have Emma declared dead. She submitted a fake death certificate, fake police reports, fake newspaper obituaries. The works? The insurance company flagged it immediately because, well, Emma is obviously very much alive and has been paying taxes, working, living her normal life. I felt detached from my own body, like I was watching this happen to someone else. She tried to steal my inheritance by pretending I was dead. Yes, And when the insurance investigator started digging, they uncovered not just the life insurance policy, but the savings account and several other irregularities in Melissa's paperwork. That's what triggered the audit that led us here. "Where is she now?" Rick asked quietly. "That's the thing," Mr. Peterson said. "We don't know. The fake death certificate she filed for Emma was supposedly from a car accident in Nevada. But when the police investigated, they found that Melissa had been using Emma's social security number to open credit cards, take out loans, even rent apartments. Identity theft," I whispered. "Extensive identity theft. Emma, she's been living a second life as you for the past 2 years. That's how she was able to maintain her expensive lifestyle while supposedly being a poor graduate student. The pieces were falling into place in the most horrifying way possible. The credit cards Rick was paying off, the school expenses, the apartment deposits. She was using my credit, my identity to fund her lies. And when she disappeared 3 weeks ago, she didn't just vanish as Melissa. She's been living as you, Emma. She has your driver's license, your social security card, your birth certificate." Rick stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "This is insane. How is this possible?" "It's possible because Melissa has been planning this for years. Emma, do you remember when you lost your purse about 3 years ago? You said it was stolen from your car." A chill ran down my spine. "Melissa was visiting that weekend. She said she'd help me look for it." "She didn't help you look for it. She took it. That's when she got access to your personal documents." I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of what Melissa had done. She hadn't just stolen money or spread lies. She'd tried to erase me completely and take over my entire identity. "Mr. Peterson," I said finally, "what happens now?" Now we press charges for identity theft, insurance fraud, and attempted murder." "Attempted murder." "Emma, legally speaking, filing a false death certificate while someone is alive can be considered attempted murder in some jurisdictions. She was trying to kill you on paper so she could steal your life." Rick came back to his chair and took my hand. "Emma, I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I had even suspected." "Rick, you couldn't have known. None of us could have known how far she was willing to go." But even as I said the words, I was thinking about something else. Something that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Peterson, you said she's been living as me for 2 years." "Yes. What has she been doing as me? Where has she been living?" Mr. Peterson consulted his notes. "According to the credit reports, Emma has been living in Las Vegas, working as a casino dealer and apparently engaged to a man named Marcus Webb." The room went silent. "She's engaged," I said slowly. "As me. She's engaged to someone as me. Yes, and Emma, there's one more thing. I wasn't sure I could handle one more thing. The marriage license was filed 2 weeks ago. According to the state of Nevada, you're married." I stared at him. "I'm married to someone I've never met." "Legally, yes. Melissa married this man using your identity, which means that when we catch her, and we will catch her, she won't just be facing fraud charges. She'll be facing bigamy charges too, since she's still technically married to David." Rick stood up again, his face flushed with anger. "She's not just a thief. She's not just a liar. She's completely, utterly insane. The good news," Mr. Peterson continued, "is that all of this illegal activity has actually made our job easier. The FBI is now involved because of the interstate fraud. They'll find her. And my inheritance will be released to you immediately. All of it. The life insurance, the savings account, everything. Plus, Emma, you'll be able to sue Melissa for damages. Identity theft, emotional distress fraud. We're talking about significant money." I sat back in my chair, overwhelmed. In the span of 1 hour, I'd gone from having no family inheritance to being worth over $600,000, from being the victim of wedding drama to being the victim of identity theft and attempted murder. "There's something poetic about this," I said finally. Rick looked at me. "What do you mean?" "Melissa spent years trying to make me disappear from the family. Turns out she was literally trying to make me disappear from existence. But instead of erasing me, she's the one who's going to vanish into a federal prison cell." 6 months later, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Melissa had been arrested in Las Vegas, living under my name in a penthouse apartment paid for with money she'd stolen using my credit. The man she'd married, Marcus, had no idea who she really was. He'd fallen in love with the woman he thought was Emma, not knowing that the real Emma was 3 states away watching his wife's arrest on the evening news. The strangest part, Marcus seemed like a genuinely good guy. He'd been completely devastated to learn that his wife of 2 weeks was actually a fugitive who'd stolen someone else's identity. He sent me a letter through the lawyers apologizing for the situation and expressing his relief that I was alive and well. Melissa was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison for identity theft fraud and a dozen other charges. David's divorce was finalized. Rick changed his will to explicitly exclude her from any inheritance. And me, I used part of my father's insurance money to buy a house 20 minutes from Rick and Mom. Close enough to be part of the family, far enough to maintain my independence. The best part is the garden. I planted it myself, choosing every flower, every tree, every bush. It's mine, completely mine, and no one can take it away from me. Sometimes I think about that phone call, the one where Melissa asked me to be her bridesmaid. How excited I was, how desperately I wanted to belong. How I would have done anything to earn her approval. Now I realize that the family I was so desperate to belong to was built on lies. The real family, the one with Rick, Mom, Jake, even Nathan and Carol, only became real after Melissa was gone. She tried to erase me, but in the end she erased herself. And I'm still here, stronger than ever, with a garden that blooms every spring and a family that actually loves me. Sometimes the best revenge is simply surviving and thriving while your enemies destroy themselves. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I learned it well. Story 2. I'm a 27-year-old woman with a 31-year-old sister that I haven't spoken to in 7 years. There was no argument or fallout between us. She just vanished one day, so we didn't communicate. My sister left her twin toddlers at my house 7 years ago, promising to return at the end of the day after running some errands. Since it was common for my sister to ask me to watch her children if I was at home and she had work to do, or if I was unavailable, I agreed to watch them for a while. Her children were 1.5 years old at the time. We were raised by our maternal aunt after our parents died when we were both quite young, perhaps 10 years old. 47. Women. I think my aunt's illness prevented her from taking the children when she brought them to my house. I was living in an apartment with my friends at the time and was almost finished with college. I stayed behind while they went out to celebrate. I spent some time watching the children, but after 900, I became concerned because my sister was running really late. I made numerous attempts to call her, but the calls were unsuccessful, and she did not return my texts. I asked my aunt for assistance after waiting a little longer. She also attempted to call my sister, but her calls were unsuccessful. I looked at my sister's social media accounts, but I couldn't get in touch with her there either because everything was disabled. Around 11 o'clock at night, my friends returned and attempted to call her but were unsuccessful. Ultimately, I had to acknowledge that perhaps my sister had no intention of returning on that particular day, but that one day ended up becoming a week. Then 6 full years, then a year, then a month. 24 hours after we were unable to locate her, my aunt and I filed a missing persons report. We didn't want to believe she was deliberately avoiding going back. Although it was awful, I did accept it after a few months. Growing up, my sister and I weren't very close because she wasn't like me, but I still loved her the way family does. She chose not to go to college after becoming somewhat of a party animal in high school. Instead, at the age of 19, she moved into a small apartment with her high school boyfriend and got a job, which is fine, but they would waste a lot of their money needlessly and lacked responsibility. The majority of it would go toward her boyfriend's collection of sneakers, clothing, and makeup and club drinks. As a result, she would ask my aunt for rent far too frequently. And when she was knocked up and had to visit the doctor a lot, that increased. Luckily, my aunt, who had a prosperous business and no husband or children of her own, could afford it. She did it without complaining because we were all her family. But every time my sister came around begging for money, she would look really disappointed, and I could tell that she didn't like the way my sister lived. I therefore resolved to put in more effort so as not to disappoint her. Naturally, my sister and her boyfriend eventually vanished, and their friends were also clueless about their whereabouts. We simply had to accept that they would most likely not return for a very long time, if at all. Until last week, I had no idea if she was still alive, After 6 years, I work as an investment banker and live with my aunt in the house I grew up in. The house where I grew up with my parents was recently repurchased by my aunt and me, and we have been residing there ever since. My sister's unexpected reappearance last week caught both my aunt and I off guard, as we had essentially come to terms with her absence. She had been back for 3 weeks and had finally found us after asking some of her old friends for help. At first, she seemed pleased to see us. However, my aunt and I felt conflicted. You don't just abruptly vanish for 6 years and then return expecting nothing has changed. The conversation was tense at best, despite our best efforts to be courteous and civil to her. Since she didn't offer an explanation and it didn't seem like there was any point we didn't ask her where she had been. She eventually inquired about her children and expressed a desire to see them once more, but they did not reside with us. After she vanished, my aunt and I looked after them for nearly a month. We were unable to provide full-time care for them because my aunt worked and I was a college student. The children required constant care, but we were old enough to handle things on our own. My aunt was unable to balance work and children, and I had to study. After almost a month, we were forced to make the difficult decision to allow them to be adopted by another family. They were available for adoption because they were officially abandoned. They were eventually adopted by a good couple named Adam and Martha. We continue to visit the children and stay in contact. Since I knew my sister would be upset and I didn't want her to annoy Adam, Martha, or the children, I kept everything from her. When she left them with me, I told her that we had to place them for adoption, but I didn't tell her anything else. At first, she thought I was kidding when I told her, but my aunt and I were serious. The situation wasn't amusing. She eventually came to the conclusion that we were telling the truth and became furious with us. She simply acted hysterically. She screamed at us, called us heartless and vicious monsters and so on before breaking down in tears. She seemed to calm down a little after my aunt and I allowed her to have a tantrum, but we had nothing left to discuss, so I asked her to leave. She did go, but she was still crying. And since she wasn't a particularly expressive or emotional person, it was quite upsetting to see her in that state. Therefore, it was quite significant for her to completely collapse in front of us. We decided not to discuss it at all because my aunt and I were unsure of how to respond to this. The fact that my sister had finally arrived after 6 long years expecting everything to have stayed the same, and then yelling at us for doing what everyone else and their rational minds would have done was exhausting enough. We didn't want to talk about it anymore and make things worse for ourselves. We therefore avoided discussing it and acted as though it had never occurred. However, my sister sent me an email yesterday and she mentioned a lot of things that I feel compelled to discuss. I don't want to bother my aunt or ruin her mood right now by bringing up this nonsense because she has a lot on her plate and her business is doing incredibly well. Instead, I'm here. According to my sister, she had been relying on me to keep her children safe while she was away, but I let her down by leaving them unattended. She wanted me to help her find her children so she could bring them back with her because she was disappointed in me. Right now. She also requested an apology from my aunt and me for our inappropriate behavior toward her the other day, if we desired her presence in our lives. She told me to be quick because she wanted to see her kids as soon as possible and that she would be waiting for a response. I was so disgusted by the email that I lost my temper after reading it. It made me feel entitled. For some reason, she now expected my aunt and I to act like family again in the heat of the moment, even though she hadn't told us where she'd been for the previous 6 years. She did her children a favor by leaving them at my house, and then vanishing from our lives, I wrote in my email response, because at least now those impoverished children have a chance at a better life than she herself could have ever given them. They are fortunate that they managed to get away from her and send that email I told her, because she would have been a horrible mother to her children. My aunt visited my room in the evening to inform me that my sister had just received a call from her boyfriend. The number can be found on her website under her business contact information. When he called, he informed her that she had read and received the letter I had sent and was inconsolable. She had a complete mental breakdown and repeatedly stated that she was so distraught that she needed to be sedated in order to get her children back. I now feel a great deal of guilt and believe that I went a bit too far in telling my sister that her children were fortunate and that she had left them because they now had better parents. One update. Hello, everyone. First of all, I would like to express my gratitude to everyone who left a comment on the initial post. I'm sending love to everyone who has psychotic sisters and dysfunctional families. We find a way to deal with it even though I know it's difficult. I posted 3 days ago and the response has been tremendous. I now realize that I am not at fault in this situation and that everything I stated in that email was accurate. She caused her own breakdown by leaving her children without providing an explanation, so it's not my fault that she had one. She didn't even bother to let me know that she wanted me to look after them while she was away. She misled me by saying that she would return at the end of the day to pick them up. I therefore agreed to watch them for a few hours. I wouldn't do that for the next 6 years. Even though I adore my nephews, I couldn't have them around while I'm working on my future because they can be a pain in the ass. My sister's expectation that her children would still be living with me after 6 years was absurd because I didn't agree to that. I just need to address a few things regarding her email and get everything off my chest. I didn't desert her children. If anything, I was able to assist them by guiding them to more evident and better parents who genuinely cared for them more than my sister did. It was my sister who left them at my house and spent 6 years somewhere unknown. Furthermore, she has yet to provide us with the precise location of her visit. To be honest, I'm not interested enough to inquire either. She is somewhat entitled to expect that we owe her anything, much less assist in finding her children, if she doesn't even have that. Regarding an apology, she can essentially disregard it as I no longer want her in my life. She has been absent from my life for years, and I'll be perfectly content if she stays away from me in the future. 3 days have passed since we last heard from her or her boyfriend, and that's fine with me. I don't care what happened to her after the breakdown, even if people think I'm heartless. After she left, my aunt and I had a lot of problems and worried about being sick for many days, but she also didn't bother to check on us. So why should I treat her with the same decency? I'm positive that my sister is not the victim in this case, but she can play the victim all she wants. She is the one responsible for this mess, and she must now cope with its consequences. After leaving her own children and learning that they had been adopted by a better family, I can't even begin to imagine how entitled and delusional someone must be to act out and have a tantrum. They deserve to know, so at least we want them in my office. I have faith in them and know that they love the children even more than they love themselves, even though I have no idea how they will handle this. They refuse to put them in danger. And by harm, I mean that when I told my sister Adam, he became worried and begged me not to tell her who had adopted her children. However, I assured him that she might be their biological mother, so he didn't need to worry. However, nothing could take away from them the fact that they were the children's biological parents. Not even my sister. I actually felt bad for not telling them sooner, but I didn't want them to panic needlessly, and that seemed to calm them down a little. It's okay though. They are now aware, and after this update, I hope my sister avoids all of us as well. Alright, so today, my sister made the decision to contact me once more. Since it's the weekend, my aunt and I were both at home when she arrived at around 3 o'clock. We told her to leave over the intercom because this was becoming more and more absurd every week, but she refused to leave until we told her where her children were. We didn't even want to open the door for her. Now, naturally, we cannot share that information with anyone, especially not with her, without first obtaining their consent. We informed her that we were unsure and threatened to call the police to forcibly remove her if she refused to leave. She then started pleading with us. She began to say things like that she only wanted to see them once and that she didn't even mind if she had to see them from a distance as long as she got a glimpse of them. I could see through the cameras that she was literally on her knees and her voice was filled with a lot of pain. I'm still a human being regardless of what happened, so it broke my heart. I did have sympathy for her. Despite my terrible feelings, I tried to keep myself composed by thinking about the children and what she had done in the past before finally telling her that she had to go, or I would actually report trespassing to the police. However, she was still crying on the doorstep. With no other choice, I had to call the police, who came 15 minutes later and removed her. She resisted even then, though, and had to be carried away while yelling and kicking. I can't even blame my aunt because this is so heartbreaking. She simply sat through the entire thing in silence, her head in her hands. My aunt literally raised us both, not because my sister will never be able to get her children back. She must now observe. In front of her, one of the children she reared completely collapsed, and she was powerless to stop it. She simply needed to observe everything and let it go. She must have found it difficult to see my sister in that condition. For me, neither had it been simple. And it's just really unsettling because although I understand that she's going through a lot at the moment, she is solely responsible for her predicament. I am unsure of the precise reason behind her disappearance, but I doubt it makes her actions any more acceptable. All I want is for her to return to her previous location. Not because I hate her, but just because I lack the emotional fortitude to watch my sister repeatedly lose it and hurt someone else this much. I simply can't keep doing this. I may even need to start searching for attorneys in order to obtain a restraining order against her. Though technically we're not in a dangerous situation, we never know. I'm not sure how effective that will be or even if I qualify for it. Things can go terribly wrong very fast, especially with my sister, who is obviously very emotionally unstable at the moment. Right now, I'm completely numb and don't know what to do or think. Since my sister's return, nothing feels the same, and I seriously doubt that I will ever be able to resume my normal life. It's kind of ironic that she first upended our lives by going missing, and now she's doing the same with her comeback. It helps put into perspective her true selfishness and the fact that she never bothers to consider anyone but herself. I just want them to leave now, so I hope that she and her boyfriend have succeeded in the past 6 years. I don't even give a damn about her whereabouts. Nothing will come of her return, so I just want her gone and gone forever. The third update. 5 hours ago, my sister sent me another email. I read it right away and went straight home to see my aunt, after sending it her way. It has been 2 days since the last update. The location of my sister for the final 6 years of our lives was finally explained to us today. Her boyfriend's uncle gave him a free job at his Miami hotel 7 years ago, about a month before she vanished. However, he had made it clear that he would not be able to bring his children with him. My sister was still welcome, if she could somehow make you useful. She followed him, and the two of them began working there for a salary that was significantly higher than what they were earning here. She kept it from us because she was afraid that my aunt would ask her to return all of the money that my aunt had given her if she found out about her earnings. She did this out of greed and fear. Over time, she remained silent about her whereabouts. After putting in a lot of effort, getting promoted, and eventually saving up enough money to launch their own company in Miami, they were ready to do just that. In order to finally bring their children back with them, they first made the decision to travel back here. My sister was certain that my aunt and I loved their children too much to let them go anywhere else, so she had been relying on us to take care of them while she was away and raise them well so she could take over whenever she was able to. They hadn't had the foresight to consider the possibility that we might have actually placed their children for adoption, which is currently the case. However, her brilliant plan had a single flaw, and that was it. She had vanished without saying a word, and hadn't even informed us of this. She had most likely forgotten that my aunt and I were not merely robots that would do as she had instructed, but rather sentient human beings with free will, without even questioning it. In order to maintain some level of contact with her children, she was now pleading with us via email to at least allow us to see them before she returned and to stay in contact with the adoptive parents. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of this email was, but it was probably to let us know that she had been working for years and that we might suddenly change our minds or something. However, my sister has failed miserably if that was the true impact of her story. It's crazy that she avoided us for 6 years because she was so terrified that my aunt would demand payment from us. In the first place, my aunt is the last to request money from the United States, and even if she had, my sister ought to have been appreciative enough to do it without hesitation, due to her obligation to our aunt. Furthermore, I don't think any parent deserves sympathy for being willing to leave their children for 6 years without even checking in to see how they're doing in order to save a few extra dollars. Not someone as shallow and materialistic as my sister at the very least. Her story only served to highlight the inexcusable nature of her actions. However, at least we no longer have to feel sorry for her. She is nothing more than a vile human excuse. Without even getting a response, my aunt and I made the decision to block her, because she is entitled to that. We have also informed Adam and Martha about the email, and we will undoubtedly follow their lead if they decide to take legal action against her in order to stop her from harassing us in the future. Although my aunt and I are sad that she ended up this way, we are not at all shocked. Other than the fact that she and her boyfriend succeeded, we are shocked that they did. After this, they may face a restraining order if they attempt any amusing behavior toward us. But since she has her new business to look forward to, I doubt she'll take that chance. I now wish she would simply leave and never come back. I'd rather never see her again. Story 3. I'm a 28-year-old woman who recently started a new job that pays more than her previous one. This made me very happy, and I thought it would be a wonderful idea to thank my mom, who is 51 years old, by taking her on a vacation to Greece. My dad passed away from a very serious illness when I was very young, around the age of 2 or 3, so I spent most of my childhood with my mom. I don't have many memories of him. Over the years, my mother has been the one to take care of me. She didn't have a husband to assist her with me because she was a single mother, and she must have found that extremely difficult. However, she never gave me the impression that I was too much trouble. Although my mom was the main helper, my grandparents also contributed somewhat. I sincerely appreciate everything she did. Since I didn't have a father in my life, she was like my best friend. My first thought upon receiving this promotion and the accompanying pay increase was to show my mother how much I value her by doing something kind for her. I could have asked my friends to join me on the trip, but since my mother is so important to me, I asked her instead. She would love to go, but she wanted to bring my step-siblings and her new husband, she said when I questioned her about the trip. For some background, my mom married her current husband 3 years ago when he was 48. She hadn't told me or anyone else in our family about him until they were engaged, even though they had been dating for 2 years prior. They married rather quickly after, and it caught us all off guard. My stepdad and his teenage children have never been someone I've really gotten along with or felt at ease around. The youngest is a 14-year-old boy, and the oldest is a 16-year-old girl. My mom doesn't have custody of the children, and I'm not sure why his first marriage ended, but she seems to believe it was because his ex-wife wasn't a good person and didn't treat them well. Before he met my mom, my stepdad had been divorced for roughly 2 years. I didn't want to bring up the fact that my mother wanted them to accompany us on the trip because they all seemed content together. Organizing everything for 4 people instead of just 2 will be more costly and a little more work, and I might not be able to spend as much time with my mom as I had hoped. However, since the primary objective of this trip is to make my mother happy and to express my gratitude for all of the sacrifices she made for me during my upbringing, I'm fine with that. I therefore agreed a few days after my mother asked if her family could travel to Greece with us. Since my new job pays well enough for me to be able to spend a little more without worrying too much, I was fine with this. After nearly 2 weeks of deliberation, we finally purchased our airline tickets. We all felt extremely exhausted from the lengthy flight, so we arrived in Athens yesterday afternoon. In an attempt to overcome the jet lag, we made the decision to nap. The fact that my step-siblings, my mom's children, opted to sleep in my hotel room rather than in the room next to us with my mom and stepdad struck me as a little odd. I didn't say anything, but I assumed my mom would remain with her children. I assumed that they would move to their own room once they woke up from their nap, and that perhaps this was just the easier option for the time being. However, they remained in my room even after everyone had woken up. We all went out to take a look around, and I didn't mind at all. The kids immediately went back to my room when we returned to the hotel. At that point, I made the decision to discuss the sleeping arrangements with my mom and stepdad. I suggested that it might be time for the kids to sleep in their own room when I had a chance to speak with my stepdad in the hotel lobby. My stepdad made a joke out of it and laughed, which surprised me. He advised me to consider adding babysitting services if I wanted to give my mom a true vacation. I didn't initially understand the joke, but he seemed to think it was hilarious. Then he clarified that by planning this trip to give my mom a respite from her typical hectic life, I also needed to look after the children so she could unwind fully. Upon saying thank you, they both grinned and left me speechless. Planning and funding this trip made me feel like I was already accomplishing a lot, especially since it wasn't typical for children to behave in such a manner toward their parents. At first, I wanted the trip to be just my mom and me, but I was trying to be patient with her new family. In addition, I was the one who paid for everything. Therefore, I felt it was really unfair that they expected me to take care of the children as well. I believed that my mom should have simply left the kids at home and joined me as I had planned if she truly needed a break. After giving it some thought, I made the decision to try speaking with them again to see if I could explain things to them. My stepdad wasn't pleasant at all when I tried to bring it up again. This time, he was quite straightforward when he told me that I had to share my room with the children because, in his opinion, they were equally entitled to a break. I stood there in shock as he shut the door in my face before I could even react. It was made worse by the fact that despite my stepdad's extreme cruelty and disrespect toward me, my mother said nothing to support me. Since I had put in a lot of effort to earn the promotion and pay increase that allowed for this trip, I was shocked that he felt the kids should have this vacation. They were mistreating me rather than appreciating what I had done. When I returned to my room and saw the children lying on the bed beside mine, I became very upset. In an attempt to try something new, I politely asked the children if they would think about moving to the other room. I'm hoping they'll agree. However, they refused. They told me that they felt it was acceptable to share my room because their parents had advised them to do so. Since their dad's behavior wasn't their fault, I didn't get upset with them. I simply left them alone and pondered my options for the next few hours. Then at 10 o'clock at night, I saw that the children were asleep. After much deliberation, I ultimately concluded that leaving without telling anyone was the best course of action. They had been extremely impolite and self-centered, and I didn't want to be treated rudely while on my own financially supported vacation. So I hurriedly packed my bags without giving it any thought. Fortunately, it was simple because I hadn't unpacked much. I was not concerned about the hotel employees. I simply informed them that my mom and stepdad would pay the bill and that I was checking out. Even though it was past midnight, I was still able to locate another hotel close to our current one. I was able to relocate to a new hotel in less than half an hour after finding a ride. The new location was even more pleasant than the previous one. I made the decision to use my extra cash to treat myself now that I was away from my mother and her family. I had a great night's sleep, and I booked a soothing, full-body massage at the hotel spa as soon as I woke up the following morning. After putting in so much effort to get promoted, I wanted to make sure I made the most of my vacation. I wasn't concerned that my mom and stepdad would try to get in touch with me because I had already unfollowed them on social media the previous evening. They were also unable to find out where I was staying at this time. I was enjoying myself until lunchtime, at which point my mother got in touch with me. She made a new Instagram account specifically for the purpose of messaging me. She accused me of treating them unfairly, particularly her. It wasn't right to abandon them in a foreign country without warning, she said. She believed that I ought to have had a family-style conversation with them in the morning to resolve the issue in a way that would satisfy everyone, but I had, instead, left them silent. Their bank cards weren't functioning in Greece at the time, and the hotel staff was beginning to demand payment since they were discussing checking out after learning that I had left. In other words, they were essentially stranded and unable to pay for their hotel accommodations. I made sure the hotel was aware that the rooms were now in their names rather than mine before I left, so I wouldn't be held responsible for any issues that might arise, which I knew would happen. My mother expressed her deep disappointment in me. She was shocked that I would behave in such a careless and immature manner. She insisted that I return right away to assist them and make things right. My mother messaged me to bemoan the state of affairs and to insist that I return to assist. I was furious. She seemed to believe that she was entitled to my assistance at all costs, which exacerbated my rage. So I responded to her out of frustration. I advised her to ask her husband for assistance because she seems to rely on him for everything these days, and that she was mature enough to manage her own issues. She was furious at what I said. She said she was sorry she had agreed to the trip with me after reading my message. She said that I was making trouble for them because I was jealous of her new life and her new family. I don't believe I made a mistake. Anyone else in my situation would most likely experience the same emotions and responses. Envy isn't the issue. She seems to care more about her new family than about me, her own child, which makes me sad. But now that I'm an adult, I suppose I have to accept that. But I can't stand it when they treat me poorly, especially when they're depending on me for the trip. It also hurts a lot that my mother didn't stand up for me when her husband was acting so rudely. Thus, abandoning them in a foreign land was not an act of cruelty. It had to do with defending myself. I paid for the trip, but my stepdad insisted that I stay in the same hotel as my step-siblings. I simply didn't think it was fair. One update. Hello, everyone. I wanted to share some thoughts and an update. After taking into account all of your suggestions and remarks, I decided not to apologize to my mother, and I haven't gotten in touch with her since. Reading your insights, reflecting on everything. I've learned that I didn't know my mother as well as I thought I did. I was thinking about how generous I was to even suggest that we go on a vacation together, which she ought to have appreciated. But things got out of hand more quickly than I thought was appropriate. She expected me to give up my privacy and comfort for her stepchildren in addition to insisting on involving her family and our plans. Given that they aren't actually my immediate family, I find it incomprehensible that she would assume I would be comfortable sitting down and resolving conflicts as a family. Her stepchildren are not my siblings, and her husband is not my father. Therefore, I don't think it's my duty to have family-style conversations with them. They treated me with such disrespect that I finally decided to leave them behind, despite my best efforts to plan this trip for everyone. The very least I could have hoped for would have been a basic degree of respect and gratitude from them, but they didn't even offer that. I don't think there's anything wrong with what I did. If I had to choose one area where I might have erred, it would have been letting my mother convince me to let her family join the trip. I shouldn't have to sacrifice my comfort or enjoyment for them because they aren't my family. I got into this situation because I felt I owed it to my mother. Even though she has always been a loving and supportive mother, that doesn't give her the right to demand things of me now. That's just my perspective on the matter. I have not responded to her attempts to communicate for an entire day. She still occasionally sends me messages, but I haven't responded to them. I know that blocking her wouldn't deter her, so I haven't done that yet. To get in touch, she would probably just make a new account. In order to protect my mental health, I have decided to mute her and leave her messages unread. Right now, my main goal is to enjoy my trip as I see fit. This solitary excursion has evolved into an unforeseen voyage of introspection and self-discovery, without the incessant clamor and pressure to please everyone else. I've been able to concentrate on the things I really hope to gain from this experience: discovering new locations, enjoying the local way of life, and making time to rest and decompress has been immensely freeing. It serves as a reminder that occasionally removing oneself from challenging circumstances can result in a much-needed change in viewpoint and personal development. Despite the less than ideal conditions that preceded this solo adventure, I'm now seizing the chance to maximize my journey, gaining knowledge about the world and myself in the process. The second update. Suddenly, my mom and her family arrive at the hotel where I'm staying. The hotel staff wouldn't let her come up to see me or even let her know which room I was in, so she makes a big scene in the lobby. It is completely typical for hotels to do this for security and privacy reasons. I don't know why that shocked her. In any case, I made the decision to go down and investigate the commotion, and my mother was furious as soon as I arrived. She dragged me aside and began to scream at me for abandoning them. After resolving their bank issue and paying their bill, they had somehow been able to leave the other hotel. However, they now wanted me to give them an explanation for my initial departure. I didn't believe I had to explain anything to them. In spite of this, I ended up explaining my departure in detail, and as I did so, I could see my stepdad growing increasingly agitated. He appeared to be about to lose his temper by the time I was done, but to be honest, I didn't give a damn. All of this mess was caused by his actions. I wouldn't have needed to leave if he had simply been courteous and kind. Therefore, it was absurd of him to be upset with me. I'm not supposed to feel bad for him. My mother then thought it was appropriate to give me a speech about morals and family values. What I said was completely incorrect. She called me a coward for not confronting my family, believing that my actions were humiliating to them. I was furious about this, especially when she brought up family once more. We weren't truly a family, and I had to remind her of that. She had only told us about her new family when she was getting married, and she had kept them a secret from us for a long time. It was quite daring of her and her husband to expect me to treat them as though we were close, especially since they never really made an effort to make me feel like a member of their family. I told her up front that I was finished. They should leave me alone because I didn't want to spend the remainder of my trip with her or her family. She even dared to ask me to arrange their return flights, but I turned her down. I had planned the vacation, which was enough. It wasn't my problem if they weren't able to appreciate that. They have their own money and are adults. If they don't appreciate what I've done, I won't go out of my way for them. My stepdad finally intervened and took them away after they continued to argue, glaring at me the entire time. But his appearance didn't matter to me. That drama happened a few hours ago, and now I'm going to dinner with a local friend who contacted me after learning I was in town. All I want is for my mom and her family to return home so I can continue my trip without interruption. I really don't want to drag this argument out any longer. The third update. It appears that I was overconfident that my mom would simply put our argument behind us and let me enjoy my vacation without interference. We got into a heated argument a few days ago, and I essentially told her that I didn't show her anything. I believed that would be the end of it, and that she would eventually stop bothering me. Today, however, that was not the case. I was about to head out on my own to explore the city when I received a call from the hotel's front desk. They claimed that my mother had returned and wanted to see me. In the hopes that we could resolve our differences and I could resume enjoying my trip, I made the decision to go down and meet her. When I met her in the lobby, I wasn't sure what to anticipate, but she appeared more depressed than angry. That gave me a glimmer of hope that our conversation might not be as unpleasant as the last time. She pretended that she deserved everything and began by apologizing for her outburst the other day. She claimed that she was acting in that manner without even realizing it. She clarified that she and her spouse were eagerly anticipating a vacation. Taking care of the children, running the household, and managing their money have been stressful for them. Before I invited her on this trip, things were really tense at home. Because she loves us all so much and wants us to be a part of each other's lives, she believed that this trip might be an opportunity for us to all become closer and for our relationships to grow stronger. Now, though, she wasn't sure if that was the best course of action, particularly since it's obvious that I don't get along with her husband. The last time they left the hotel, she and her husband got into a heated argument about the whole thing. He even went so far as to claim that she had raised me poorly. It was a low blow, given that he used to gripe about his ex-wife leaving the kids alone for hours while she went out, but he compared her to her. As it happens, my mom's husband's ex-wife was divorced because he eventually found out that she would leave their small children alone in a room for several hours. It was fairly obvious that it was unsafe and irresponsible to leave small children alone in that manner. Therefore, it felt like he was going too far when he likened my mother to his ex-wife simply because I chose to advocate for myself. After all, I doubt anyone would tolerate being compared to someone who did such a thing. However, my mother claims to love him and appears to accept his words. She visited me today to inform me that they would all be returning home tomorrow. She also expressed regret for her actions. Even before everything that happened with me, she was already tense due to her relationship with her husband. For her, my departure only made matters worse. She was apologizing for her involvement in our altercation. However, she later informed me that she wanted me to stay away for a while. This meant I couldn't call her to talk about commonplace topics like I used to. Hearing that I can't have the same relationship with her as before hurt me a lot, even though I wasn't planning on calling her while on vacation. Everything between us seems to have changed as a result of her husband. To be honest, there is a part of me that wishes she hadn't even traveled to apologize. I simply feel worse about the whole thing as a result. She is still my mother, even though she made a mistake. She was the person I was closest to as a child, and her new family makes me feel like I'm losing a significant portion of my youth. I can't do much about it, but it's a difficult pill to swallow. It's her choice if she's picking them over me. I suppose my only option at this point is to try to make the most of my remaining time here. I might as well enjoy myself since I'm paying a lot of money to stay at this lovely hotel. That's the current situation. Update 4. Hi there. 3 days ago, I returned from my trip and I'm getting ready to return to work tomorrow. By making the most of my trip and genuinely enjoying myself, I was able to have a decent time. Up until last night, I was doing a pretty good job of keeping the entire situation with my mom out of my mind. My grandparents then revealed something surprising to me. My mother made the decision to divorce her husband. It seems that they were already struggling before all of this, and they have realized that they are no longer able to maintain their relationship. She seemed to have chosen them over me during our argument, so it's a little strange and depressing for me that she no longer even has them. We haven't settled anything since the day she visited me at the hotel. We haven't communicated. Since I was busy trying to enjoy the remainder of my vacation and didn't think it would make much difference, I didn't get in touch with her. I didn't think much about her even after returning home. I reasoned that it might be best not to press the issue if she hadn't tried to speak with me. I didn't want to put myself in a position where I was obviously unwanted. In particular, she made it clear that she wasn't yet ready to speak with me. Furthermore, based on the current situation, it appears that she has no immediate plans to get in touch. The fact that she kept her divorce decision a secret from me is noteworthy. That is a significant matter. My relationship with my mother may come to an end at this point. Furthermore, I am aware that things cannot return to their previous state, even if we manage to patch things up in the future. However, I'm accepting that. As her daughter, I did everything I could until it seemed like I could do nothing more without endangering my own health. I sincerely hope she finds happiness and am content with whatever comes next. I have no interest in harboring resentment or anger, especially toward my own mother. Life isn't long enough for that. I suppose it's time for me to begin letting this whole thing go.